Now, my good friend, Daniel McAdams, is Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace. There are not enough Ron Pauls in the American Congress, and there certainly ain't no peace. Daniel, thanks for joining us again to survey what you might call the wreckage of an extraordinary week in your country. I'm not even referring to the crime scene at the ICE facility and the mass shootings and so on. I'm trying to stay on the big picture. Donald Trump declared World War III yesterday at the United Nations. He gave the dogs of war the green light to go as far as they can. That must have dismayed you and the rest at the Ron Paul Institute.
Well, thanks for having me back on, George. I really appreciate it. It's always great talking to you and listening to you. When I first read his Truth Social post, I thought he had completely lost his mind. Because, I mean, we all know that he repeats the last person he talked to. And I think I reposted on X saying, well, we know that he met with Zelensky now because he's singing a completely different tune. But, I got up this morning and I read my good friend Larry Johnson, a former CIA officer who has a great blog, Sonar 21. And he had a different take. And the more I thought about Larry's take, the more it actually made sense. And if you look at it in a certain way, and you have to sort of use your super secret spy glasses to understand it, in a way, he's sort of washing his hands of Ukraine. He's doing it in a very odd way, but he is basically saying, hey, Ukraine, you guys, you got this. You take back all your territory. You get a chunk of Russia too if you want to. But it's going to be the Europeans and NATO, as if we're not part of NATO. But nevertheless, it's going to be the Europeans are going to finance it and NATO's going to do it. I think it's just a way of washing his hands. I think he did kind of a Pontius Pilate.
Well, of course, that's one reading of it. It's not the reading that Zelensky obviously has taken. It's not the reading reflected in the European media today. They're packing their kit bags for the front. It's not the reading in Moscow, where it was all seen as an exceedingly unfriendly series of acts, the speech, the Truth Social posting. But it might be true. It is extraordinary how Donald Trump has begun to refer to NATO in the third person, like the United States wasn't in NATO, wasn't the mainstay of NATO. How's it being treated in the U.S. media? Is it
and as if we don't
now?
And as if we don't. I'm sorry. Yes, I was just going to say as if we don't fund about 73% of NATO. So you can't pretend that It's not you when you're funding. It's just like President Trump pretended that he's a neutral, referee of this war when in fact we're arming one side. But I did notice in Russia the response wasn't, perhaps I missed something, but the response wasn't, aside from Medvedev, which we've come to expect good things from, but there really wasn't a radical response. I mean, maybe even as we speak, the meeting between Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, and Foreign Minister Lavrov is taking place with the two teams. You would think if they took it as seriously, and even Peskov sort of made light of it, as you pointed out in your monologue a bit ago. We're not a tiger, we're a bear, and there's no such thing as paper bears. You would have thought it would have been, had he really meant this and been taken to have meant it, that you might have heard a stronger response from Moscow. Now, again, you may have heard something that I didn't. I just got back from our studio, but it didn't seem as strong as I thought it might be.
Well, again, that's a very fair point, counterpoint. But the stock market crashed. The Russian stock market crashed on the absorbing of what, on the face of it, appeared to be a declaration of forever war. Ever since Trump took office 8 months ago, they've been waiting for this peace dividend that Trump promised in his election campaign. And yet there's no sign of it. And after this week, it's even farther away on the horizon. But time will tell. Rubio's talks with the master, Lavrov, are going to be important. That's true. Trump says the most important meeting he had in New York was with the Arab and Muslim heads of state, foreign ministers, and top officials. What do you think he meant by that? What was he discussing with them? He said that he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. And of course, that's good news if true, but how can we tell it is true? And in any case, what's the difference between annexation and doubling the number of illegal settlers on the West Bank?
It's de facto the same thing. You're absolutely correct. And I wonder about Trump. I mean, I think the world, certainly America, certainly myself, are experiencing Trump fatigue. I was glad that he was elected. I was hoping good things from him. But I think people are getting tired of these constant flip-flops. I mean, here he is a couple of days ago complaining Netanyahu is blanking me, and I won't use the word obviously on your show. Well, if he's blanking you, why don't you tell him to stop? If you don't want him to blank you, you can tell him to stop, and he doesn't seem to be able to do that. Obviously, the attack at Qatar was known by the U.S. It could have been stopped by the U.S. Probably could have even been stopped by Qatar. So what is going on, and how think about how much you've destroyed the credibility of the United States when the United States is following the Israeli lead of pretending to want peace, of getting a peace delegation together, and this even goes back to Soleimani assassination, and then killing the peace envoys. So who's the next person to sit down and discuss peace with the United States? I hope it's not either of us, George.
Me too. There would definitely be a drone or two in the vicinity were that to happen, Dan. Let's talk, if we can, about your friends in the media. I mean, you're not a conservative, but you are on the right. You're a libertarian. The figures that we had come to associate most with Trumpism, with the Trump way, the pure red flame of MAGA and so on, do appear to be getting farther and farther away from Trump's presidency. And it's only 8 months old. I watched Tucker Carlson today. It's a miracle to behold. I believe in miracles, as it happens. It is a miracle that Tucker Carlson can state, as he did on Greenwald's show today, that he's just tired of making Israel first, making Israel great again, of the American interest being sacrificed for Netanyahu, whom he described as a danger to the world. That's a long distance. The Tucker Carlson who was at the victory celebration last November of Donald Trump's victory. And he's not alone. Candace Owens, even sometimes Bannon, even sometimes Alex Jones. All these figures of the right are beginning to see the light, but Trump ain't. How do you explain that?
Well, there's a civil war on for the right in America, and there was a great article by Jack Hunter in Responsible Statecraft, I think it was yesterday, that discusses openly the civil war now that it is being fought around Israel. There's a huge portion and growing of the right which can't stand. In the words of Megyn Kelly, who I never thought would be uttered from her lips, she said, all of America under 30 hates Israel, and that's not usually something you get from the approved right-wing talk show host. So as you point out very well, when it even can permeate the sort of elite tier alternative, if you will, right-wing media, then you know that it's broken out in the open. And the last people on earth to know it or understand it are members of the United States House of Representatives and also the different state legislative bodies who, as this was all happening, were actually in Israel. 250 state representatives in the U.S. were in Israel for this bizarre 50 states and one Israel kind of festivity. So they will be the last ones to know, and maybe they'll be the last ones when the money runs out to look around and realize why America hates them.
It is astounding that this civil war has broken out, and one is bound to speculate, I hope you don't find it tasteless, whether that civil war engulfed Charlie Kirk, because I'm seeing more and more evidence that Charlie Kirk, if you forgive the pun, was at a turning point on his attitude to Israel. And was that anything to do with what happened to him? And anyway, what happened to him? Any thoughts, Dan?
I think there's absolutely a case that could be made, and I think there are brave people like Max Blumenthal who's uncovered a lot of information. They just come out with a piece yesterday saying that one of Kirk's last Zionist billionaires had decided to stop funding, and you can imagine what went on behind the scenes, the pressure behind the scenes, and also the pressure on Charlie running a multi-million-dollar organization with a lot of families probably that relied on that organization and the fundraising, the enormous amount of pressure. And everyone talks about it. Tucker Carlson, who knew him personally, talks about it. Candace Owens talks about it, how much pressure he was on toward the end. It's all about means and motive. We know that the Israeli government is the number one assassination machine on earth. They will do it at the drop of a hat. They will kill Americans without hesitation. We know they have the means. Do they have the motive? Well, even Netanyahu himself has talked about the fact that they need to find a way to censor young Americans because young Americans have turned against Israel. To what extent would they go to silence young American conservatives, especially the leaders of a massive populist movement like Charlie Kirk? To what extent may they go to silence him? A few years ago, I would have not entertained the thought. About what I've seen, the carnage in Gaza, nothing would surprise me with these people.
No, and so much material is now available to us. It's not like, I mean, you're too young to know, Daniel, but, we had nothing to go on the JFK assassination, except the circumstantial oddity of a guy shooting the guy that shot the president. And when we got to know who that guy was, what that guy was, that began to arouse suspicion. But it was years before we even saw Zapruder. Here we've got camera angles from 500 cameras. Here we've got data, ballistics data, that casts, well, to put it mildly, severe doubt on the official FBI story. Kash Patel must be under real pressure now, don't you think?
Well, there's a rumor that his girlfriend is Israeli, so he may be under a lot of pressure anyway on this. But as you pointed out when you started your monologue on this, there are hundreds and hundreds of ultra high definition cameras. Why are we only getting a few grainy pieces of film? Why can't we see the entire thing? If there's nothing to it, if George Galloway, Daniel McAdams, Tucker Carlson, were all kooks, it would be so easy to dispel all of this just by letting us see all of the different angles. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it, but I haven't seen any quality video yet.
No, nobody has. Finally, Daniel, and on a not necessarily unadjacent point, whatever happened to the Epstein files?
Well, Thomas Massie is trying to get them out, the representative from Kentucky, and Trump's doing his best to get Massie kicked out of office. You have to ask yourself, why? What is it? Is it because Massie, who had been a loyal friend of President Trump, who stood by him after January 6th, who opposed all of the ridiculous attempts to get him to kick him out of office, stood by his side. Now, all of a sudden, trying to do this, he becomes public enemy number one. Again, if there's no there, let us see it. Let us see what's going on. Even Kash Patel before the House committee a couple of weeks ago, he was talking about the files. But then, hold on a minute. You just said that there are no files. So which is it? Are there files that there's nothing on, or are there no files at all? We still don't have that information, and it's severely undermining Donald Trump's popularity among his base.
I would have thought so, and it was a very polarized dichotomy in the first place. Half the country hated him, and half the country liked him quite a lot. But if you begin to lose the people that liked you quite a lot, chances are you're looking at a losing hand. I know it's a long way to November next, but there must be a real danger of the Republicans losing control in the midterms. And that would put the skids right under any idea that Donald Trump has founded a dynasty, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. We'd be going back to endless impeachments. The problem is that the Democrats have nothing to bring to the table. They're not the party of the working man. The Democratic Party that my grandparents supported because we were working class, they're not the party of the working man. They're the party of the billionaire elites, of the oligarchs. They have absolutely nothing to offer America. If anyone doubts that, just go watch the latest Kamala Harris interview and you'll be disabused of that feeling. If they only had something to offer, then they might be more of a threat than they are. But it's right there on the table for the taking. But the Democrats are doing nothing to do it.